Question 1. The investigation demonstrates that a pharmacist is presented with a new prescription for a patient who is already taking multiple medications for chronic conditions. The pharmacist must determine the best course of action to ensure the safety and efficacy of the new medication within the context of the patient's existing therapy. Which of the following represents the most appropriate professional approach? Option A. Dispense the new medication immediately, relying solely on the pharmacy computer system's alerts for potential drug interactions. Option B. Dispense the new medication without a detailed review of the patient's current medication list, assuming the prescribing physician has already accounted for all potential interactions. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive medication therapy management (MTM) review, including an assessment of potential drug-drug interactions, patient adherence, and the need for patient counseling before dispensing the new prescription. Option D. Delegate the entire assessment of the new prescription's impact on the patient's current therapy to a pharmacy technician. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive medication therapy management (MTM) review, including an assessment of potential drug-drug interactions, patient adherence, and the need for patient counseling before dispensing the new prescription. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a pharmacist to balance patient care with the operational demands of a busy retail pharmacy. The pharmacist must assess the impact of a new medication on a patient's existing regimen, considering potential drug interactions, side effects, and the patient's overall health status, all while managing the workflow of dispensing other prescriptions. This necessitates a thorough understanding of pharmaceutical knowledge, patient history, and regulatory guidelines. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive medication therapy management (MTM) review. This aligns with best professional practice and regulatory expectations, such as those outlined by the U.S. Pharmacopoeia (USP) General Chapter 797 for sterile compounding. Though not directly applicable here, it highlights the emphasis on patient safety and quality in pharmacy practice, and State Board of Pharmacy regulations that mandate pharmacists to ensure the safety and efficacy of dispensed medication. A thorough MTM review allows the pharmacist to identify potential drug-drug interactions, assess the patient's adherence, and provide appropriate patient counseling, thereby mitigating risks and optimizing therapeutic outcomes. This proactive approach prioritizes patient well-being and adheres to the pharmacist's ethical and legal obligations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to simply dispense the new medication without a thorough review of the patient's current medications. This fails to meet the professional standard of care and violates the pharmacist's duty to ensure medication safety. Regulatory bodies, such as the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and state boards of pharmacy, expect pharmacists to actively identify and address potential drug interactions and adverse effects. This oversight could lead to serious patient harm, including exacerbation of existing conditions or the development of new, dangerous side effects. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the pharmacy computer system's alerts without independent professional judgment. While these systems are valuable tools, they are not infallible and may not flag all potential issues, especially complex interactions or those related to a patient's specific physiological state. Over-reliance on automated alerts can lead to a failure to recognize subtle but significant risks, which is a deviation from the pharmacist's responsibility to exercise clinical judgment. This could be considered a breach of professional negligence. A third incorrect approach would be to delegate the entire assessment to a pharmacy technician. While technicians play a vital role in pharmacy operations, the final clinical judgment and responsibility for medication safety rest with the licensed pharmacist. This delegation would be a violation of Pharmacy Practice Acts and professional ethics, as it bypasses the pharmacist's core responsibilities and expertise. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by prioritizing patient safety above all else. This involves a systematic process. First, thoroughly reviewing the patient's medication profile, including prescription and over-the-counter drugs, as well as herbal supplements. Second, utilizing available resources, such as drug interaction databases, clinical literature, and patient-specific information, to identify potential risks. Third, engaging in direct patient consultation to gather further information and provide education. Finally, documenting all findings and interventions. This structured approach ensures that all relevant factors are considered, leading to informed and safe patient care decisions. Question 2. Upon reviewing a proposal to reduce pharmacy technician staffing levels by 15% to achieve significant cost savings, what is the most professionally responsible approach to ensure patient care and regulatory compliance are maintained? Option A. Immediately implement the staffing reduction to realize the projected cost savings, assuming that existing pharmacists can absorb the additional workload. Option B. Prioritize the financial benefits of the staffing reduction, focusing solely on the cost savings without further investigation into operational or patient-related consequences. Option C. Delegate the decision-making process regarding staffing levels to the finance department, as they are best equipped to manage budgetary constraints. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to evaluate potential effects on patient access, medication adherence, pharmacist workload, and the risk of medication errors, developing mitigation strategies before any changes are implemented. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to evaluate potential effects on patient access, medication adherence, pharmacist workload, and the risk of medication errors, developing mitigation strategies before any changes are implemented. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for cost savings with the long-term implications of service disruption and potential patient harm. The pressure to reduce expenses can lead to decisions that, while seemingly efficient in the short term, may violate ethical obligations to patient care and regulatory requirements for service continuity. Careful judgment is required to ensure that cost-saving measures do not compromise patient safety or access to essential pharmacy services. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes patient well-being and regulatory compliance. By conducting a thorough impact assessment that considers patient access, medication adherence, and potential adverse events, the pharmacy leadership demonstrates a commitment to ethical pharmacy practice. This proactive evaluation allows for the identification of mitigation strategies before any changes are implemented, ensuring that patient care remains uninterrupted and that all actions align with the principles of patient advocacy and professional responsibility, as expected under U.S. federal and state pharmacy regulations. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately implementing the proposed staffing reduction without a comprehensive assessment. This fails to consider the potential negative impact on patient care, such as increased wait times, reduced pharmacist availability for consultations, and a higher risk of medication errors due to pharmacist overload. This approach violates the ethical duty to provide competent and timely patient care and could contravene State Board of Pharmacy regulations regarding adequate staffing levels necessary to ensure patient safety. Another incorrect approach is to solely focus on the financial benefits of the staffing reduction, disregarding any potential operational or patient-related consequences. This demonstrates a failure to uphold professional responsibility, which mandates that financial considerations do not supersede the health and safety of patients. Such a narrow focus could lead to a violation of Pharmacy Practice Acts that require pharmacies to operate in a manner that protects public health. A third incorrect approach is to delegate the decision-making entirely to non-pharmacy personnel without adequate pharmacy input. This bypasses the expertise of licensed pharmacists who understand the intricacies of patient care, medication management, and regulatory compliance. This can lead to decisions that are operationally feasible but detrimental to patient outcomes and may violate regulations requiring pharmacy operations to be overseen by qualified pharmacists. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a systematic decision-making process that begins with identifying the core issue and its potential impacts. This involves gathering all relevant information, including financial data, operational workflows, and patient needs. A critical step is to conduct a thorough risk assessment, evaluating potential negative consequences for patients, staff, and the organization. When considering changes that affect patient care, a formal impact assessment is essential, involving input from all affected stakeholders, particularly licensed pharmacists. This assessment should inform a mitigation plan to address identified risks. Finally, decisions should be made in alignment with all applicable laws, regulations, and ethical guidelines, with a clear rationale documented for the chosen course of action. Question 3. Quality control measures reveal that a new automated dispensing technology is being considered for widespread implementation across CVS health pharmacies. This technology promises increased efficiency and reduced labor costs. What is the most appropriate initial step to ensure patient safety and regulatory compliance before full adoption? Option A. Immediately deploy the technology to capitalize on projected cost savings and operational efficiencies. Option B. Implement the technology on a trial basis in a few select pharmacies and observe its performance without a formal assessment plan. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify potential risks and benefits to patient care, workflow, and regulatory adherence. Option D. Prioritize the technology's adoption based on its potential to reduce operational expenses, assuming minimal impact on patient care. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify potential risks and benefits to patient care, workflow, and regulatory adherence. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient operational improvements with the imperative to maintain patient safety and regulatory compliance. The introduction of a new technology, while promising benefits, carries inherent risks that must be thoroughly assessed before widespread implementation. A hasty rollout without proper impact assessment could lead to unintended consequences, such as medication errors, patient dissatisfaction, or even adverse health outcomes, all of which could trigger regulatory scrutiny and damage CVS Health's reputation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a comprehensive impact assessment. This process systematically identifies potential positive and negative effects of the new dispensing technology on patient care, workflow, staff training, data security, and regulatory adherence. By proactively evaluating these aspects, CVS Health can identify and mitigate risks, optimize the technology's integration, and ensure it aligns with all applicable U.S. federal and state pharmacy regulations, including those governed by the FDA and state boards of pharmacy. This aligns with the ethical obligation to prioritize patient well-being and the regulatory requirement to operate pharmacies safely and effectively. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the new dispensing technology without a formal impact assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses the critical step of risk identification and mitigation, potentially exposing patients to harm and the company to non-compliance. This approach disregards the principle of due diligence and the responsibility to ensure that new processes do not compromise patient safety or violate pharmacy laws. Focusing solely on the cost savings associated with the new technology, while ignoring its potential impact on patient care and operational workflows, represents a failure to uphold professional responsibilities. This narrow focus can lead to overlooking crucial safety concerns or workflow disruptions that could indirectly affect patient outcomes and compliance with regulations mandating safe dispensing practices. Adopting a wait-and-see approach, where the technology is implemented and its impact is observed only after the fact, is also professionally unacceptable. This reactive stance fails to meet the proactive requirements of regulatory compliance and ethical patient care. It allows potential risks to materialize before they are addressed, increasing the likelihood of adverse events and regulatory violations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with a thorough understanding of the operational change and its potential implications. This involves identifying all relevant stakeholders, including patients, pharmacists, technicians, and regulatory bodies. A risk-based approach, where potential harms are systematically identified, analyzed, and prioritized, is essential. Implementing mitigation strategies before deployment and establishing robust monitoring mechanisms post-implementation are key components of responsible innovation and regulatory adherence. This framework ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and compliant with all applicable laws and guidelines. Question 4. Examination of the data shows that a new third-party data aggregation tool promises significant improvements in operational efficiency by consolidating patient information from various internal systems. Before adopting this tool, what is the most appropriate approach to ensure compliance with U.S. healthcare regulations and protect patient privacy? Option A. Proceed with the implementation of the tool, assuming that existing organizational security measures will adequately protect patient data, as the vendor assures the tool is secure. Option B. Implement the tool on a limited basis within a non-critical department to observe its performance and data handling before a full rollout, without a formal pre-implementation assessment. Option C. Rely on the vendor's marketing materials and certifications to confirm the tool's compliance with U.S. healthcare regulations, and integrate it immediately to realize efficiency gains. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive data privacy and security impact assessment, including a review of the tool's data handling practices, security controls, and compliance with HIPAA regulations, to identify and mitigate potential risks before implementation. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive data privacy and security impact assessment, including a review of the tool's data handling practices, security controls, and compliance with HIPAA regulations, to identify and mitigate potential risks before implementation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency with the long-term implications of data privacy and security, particularly within the context of healthcare. CVS Health, as a healthcare provider and pharmacy, is subject to stringent regulations like the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, in the United States. The core of the challenge lies in assessing the impact of a new data aggregation tool without compromising patient confidentiality or violating regulatory mandates. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed solution aligns with legal obligations and ethical responsibilities. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive and systematic impact assessment that explicitly considers regulatory compliance. This involves a thorough review of the data aggregation tool's functionalities, data handling procedures, and security protocols against the requirements of HIPAA and other relevant privacy laws. It ensures that potential risks to protected health information, PHI, are identified and mitigated before implementation, thereby safeguarding patient privacy and avoiding significant legal and financial penalties. This proactive stance is fundamental to ethical data stewardship in healthcare. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the perceived benefits of the tool without a formal impact assessment fails to acknowledge the regulatory landscape. This oversight constitutes a significant ethical and regulatory failure. Specifically, it risks violating HIPAA privacy and security rules by potentially exposing PHI to unauthorized access or use, or by failing to implement necessary safeguards. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the vendor's assurances without independent verification is equally problematic. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and can lead to unforeseen breaches, violating the principle of accountability and potentially leading to reputational damage and loss of patient trust. A third incorrect approach that assumes existing security measures are sufficient without a specific assessment of the new tool's integration is a failure to adapt to new risks. Each new technology introduces unique vulnerabilities that must be evaluated independently. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This begins with identifying the proposed change, the data aggregation tool. Next, potential impacts on data privacy, security, and regulatory compliance must be thoroughly analyzed. This analysis should involve cross-functional teams, including legal, compliance, IT security, and operational stakeholders. Mitigation strategies should be developed for identified risks, and these strategies must be validated against regulatory requirements. Finally, ongoing monitoring and review processes should be established to ensure continued compliance and security post-implementation. Question 5. Performance analysis shows a potential opportunity to improve prescription refill adherence by identifying patients who frequently miss their refill dates. A pharmacist proposes accessing detailed patient prescription histories, including names, addresses, and specific medications, to create targeted outreach lists for these patients. What is the most appropriate and legally compliant method for the pharmacist to proceed with this initiative? Option A. Create a system that automatically flags patients based on refill patterns, and then manually review the flagged patient profiles to determine who to contact. Option B. Share the identifiable patient prescription data with a third-party analytics company that specializes in healthcare outreach, under the assumption they will handle it securely. Option C. De-identify the patient prescription data to remove all personal identifiers before using it for analysis and outreach list generation. Option D. Access the raw patient prescription data, including names and addresses, to create the outreach lists, assuming the intention is to improve patient care. The correct answer is C. De-identify the patient prescription data to remove all personal identifiers before using it for analysis and outreach list generation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to patient privacy and data security within a healthcare setting, specifically CVS Health. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for operational efficiency and data analysis with the stringent requirements of HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, regarding protected health information. 5. A pharmacist's access to patient data, even for seemingly benign purposes like improving service, must be carefully managed to prevent unauthorized disclosure or misuse. The professional must exercise judgment to ensure all actions comply with legal mandates and ethical obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves de-identifying patient data before it is used for performance analysis. This aligns directly with HIPAA privacy rule, which permits the use and disclosure of de-identified health information for purposes such as research, public health activities, and healthcare operations without patient authorization. De-identification removes all 18 identifiers specified by HIPAA, ensuring that the information cannot be used to identify an individual. This method allows for valuable operational insights while upholding the highest standards of patient confidentiality and regulatory compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis. Using raw patient data without explicit patient consent or a valid HIPAA authorization for the specific purpose of performance analysis is a direct violation of HIPAA privacy rule. This constitutes an unauthorized disclosure of PHI, which can lead to significant penalties, including fines and reputational damage. Sharing aggregated but still identifiable patient data with external vendors for analysis, even if the vendor claims to have its own privacy policies, is problematic. Without a business associate agreement (BA) in place that clearly outlines the vendor's responsibilities for protecting PHI, and without ensuring the data is de-identified, this action risks a breach of confidentiality and noncompliance with HIPAA. Implementing a system that automatically flags patients based on their prescription refill patterns for potential follow-up, without a clear protocol for how this flagging is used and who has access to the resulting lists, could inadvertently lead to discriminatory practices or unauthorized access to sensitive health information. While proactive patient care is a goal, the method must be compliant and safeguard privacy. Professional reasoning. Professionals in healthcare settings like CVS Health must adopt a risk-based approach to data handling. This involves understanding the sensitive nature of PHI, being thoroughly familiar with HIPAA regulations, and prioritizing patient privacy in all operational decisions. When considering any use of patient data, the primary question should be, is this use permitted under HIPAA? Have all necessary safeguards been implemented? Is there a business associate agreement if third parties are involved? If there is any doubt, seeking guidance from legal counsel or compliance officers is paramount. The decision-making process should always err on the side of caution to protect patient confidentiality. Question 6. The audit findings indicate that a CVS Health pharmacist has been regularly receiving small, non-monetary gifts and attending sponsored educational lunches from a pharmaceutical representative whose company manufactures a widely prescribed medication. The pharmacist has not disclosed these interactions to their direct supervisor or the company's compliance department. The audit team is concerned about the potential for these interactions to influence the pharmacist's professional judgment regarding medication recommendations and patient counseling. Option A. The pharmacist should cease all interactions with the pharmaceutical representative to avoid any appearance of impropriety without formally reporting the past interactions. Option B. The pharmacist should immediately report these interactions and any potential inducements to their pharmacy manager and the CVS Health Compliance Department for review and guidance. Option C. The pharmacist should discreetly inform the pharmaceutical representative that they can no longer accept gifts or attend sponsored events due to audit concerns. Option D. The pharmacist should continue to accept the gifts and attend the lunches, as they are not direct monetary compensation and are common industry practices. The correct answer is B. The pharmacist should immediately report these interactions and any potential inducements to their pharmacy manager and the CVS Health Compliance Department for review and guidance. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential conflict of interest scenario involving a CVS health pharmacist and a pharmaceutical representative. This situation is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the pharmacist's professional duty to patient care with potential personal or professional inducements. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that patient treatment decisions are based solely on clinical efficacy and patient needs, not on external influences. Careful judgment is required to identify and mitigate such conflicts, upholding the integrity of patient care and adherence to professional standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes patient well-being and ethical conduct above all else. By immediately reporting the potential conflict of interest to the appropriate internal channels, e.g., pharmacy manager, compliance department, the pharmacist initiates a formal review process. This ensures that the situation is handled transparently and in accordance with CVS Health's policies and relevant professional guidelines, such as those from the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy, NAP, or state pharmacy boards, which emphasize the pharmacist's fiduciary duty to the patient. This proactive reporting demonstrates a commitment to ethical practice and regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach that involves accepting gifts or favors from the pharmaceutical representative, even if seemingly minor, creates an ethical compromise. This can lead to a subtle bias in prescribing or recommending medications, directly violating the pharmacist's duty to act in the patient's best interest. Such actions could be seen as a violation of state pharmacy board regulations concerning professional conduct and may also contravene the Prescription Drug Marketing Act, PDMA, if it involves improper inducements related to prescription drugs. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the situation and continuing to interact with the representative without disclosure, is professionally unacceptable. This failure to act can be interpreted as tacit acceptance of the potential conflict and a disregard for ethical obligations. It leaves the situation unaddressed, potentially allowing the conflict to influence patient care without oversight, and failing to uphold the standards of professional integrity expected of a CVS health employee. This also bypasses established internal controls designed to prevent such ethical breaches. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of ethical codes and company policies. When faced with a potential conflict of interest, the professional should 1. Recognize the potential conflict. 2. Consult relevant policies and ethical guidelines. 3. Disclose the situation to the appropriate authority within the organization. 4. Cooperate fully with any investigation or review. 5. Prioritize patient welfare and professional integrity in all decisions. Question 7. Analysis of a scenario where a pharmacist receives a prescription for a Schedule Roman II controlled substance that appears to be for a patient with a history of opioid misuse. The prescription is for a higher dosage than typically prescribed for the patient's stated condition and was called in by a new prescriber the pharmacist has not encountered before. The pharmacist has a professional obligation to dispense legally valid prescriptions, but also a duty to prevent potential drug diversion and ensure patient safety. Option A. Contact the patient directly to inquire about their medical history and the reason for this specific prescription before contacting the prescriber. Option B. Dispense the prescription as written, assuming the prescriber is acting in good faith and the patient requires the medication. Option C. Refuse to fill the prescription immediately and inform the patient that the pharmacy cannot dispense controlled substances without further investigation. Option D. Contact the prescribing physician's office to verify the prescription details, confirm the patient's diagnosis, and discuss the appropriateness of the dosage and medication. Document this conversation thoroughly. The correct answer is D. Contact the prescribing physician's office to verify the prescription details, confirm the patient's diagnosis, and discuss the appropriateness of the dosage and medication. Document this conversation thoroughly. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a pharmacist's duty to dispense legally prescribed medications and the ethical imperative to ensure patient safety and prevent potential harm. The pharmacist must exercise sound professional judgment, balancing legal obligations with a responsibility to act in the patient's best interest, especially when a prescription raises concerns about misuse or diversion. This requires a nuanced understanding of prescription validity, patient history, and potential red flags. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented verification process. This aligns with the pharmacist's professional responsibility to dispense safely and accurately, as mandated by state pharmacy laws and professional ethical guidelines. By contacting the prescriber, the pharmacist is proactively addressing a potential issue, gathering necessary information to confirm the legitimacy of the prescription, and ensuring the patient receives appropriate care. This demonstrates due diligence, adherence to best practices for prescription verification, and a commitment to patient safety, all of which are foundational to professional pharmacy practice and regulatory compliance. Documenting these interactions is crucial for legal protection and professional accountability. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves dispensing the medication without further inquiry. This fails to meet the professional standard of care and potentially violates regulations requiring pharmacists to exercise professional judgment regarding prescription validity. It disregards the pharmacist's responsibility to prevent drug diversion or misuse, which can have serious health consequences for the patient and contribute to the opioid crisis. Ethically, it prioritizes expediency over patient well-being. Another incorrect approach is to immediately refuse to fill the prescription and dismiss the patient. This is unprofessional and potentially discriminatory. While a pharmacist has the right to refuse to fill a prescription under certain circumstances, this refusal must be based on a well-reasoned, documented professional judgment, typically after attempting to resolve the concern. A blanket refusal without investigation is an abdication of professional responsibility and may violate patient access to necessary medication if the prescription is indeed legitimate. A third incorrect approach is to contact the patient directly to question their need for the medication without first attempting to verify with the prescriber. While patient communication is important, the primary responsibility for verifying a questionable prescription lies with confirming its origin and legitimacy with the prescribing authority. Directly confronting the patient without this initial step could be perceived as accusatory, damage the patient-pharmacist relationship, and may not effectively resolve the underlying concern about the prescription's validity. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such situations should follow a structured decision-making process. 1. Identify the potential issue or red flag. 2. Consult relevant professional guidelines and regulations. 3. Gather information through appropriate channels, e.g., prescriber contact, patient history review. 4. Document all actions and communications. 5. Make a professional judgment based on the gathered information and regulatory requirements. 6. Communicate the decision clearly and professionally to all relevant parties. This systematic approach ensures patient safety, legal compliance, and ethical conduct. Question 8. Governance review demonstrates that the current process for accessing and sharing patient prescription data across different CVS health pharmacy locations is time-consuming and has led to occasional delays in patient care. The review suggests exploring a new, centralized digital platform to streamline this process, potentially improving efficiency and reducing costs. However, concerns have been raised about the security and privacy implications of consolidating such sensitive patient information. Which of the following actions best addresses the findings of the governance review while adhering to U.S. federal healthcare regulations? Option A. Delegate the decision-making authority for the new platform to the operations management team, tasking them with researching and selecting a vendor that offers the most cost-effective solution, with minimal oversight from legal or compliance. Option B. Implement a pilot program for the centralized digital platform in a limited number of pharmacies, relying on the IT department's existing security protocols and assuming they are sufficient to meet all regulatory requirements. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive assessment of the proposed centralized digital platform by engaging legal counsel and the compliance department to ensure full adherence to HIPAA privacy and security rules, and to identify necessary safeguards before any development or implementation begins. Option D. Immediately proceed with the development of a centralized digital platform, prioritizing speed of implementation to realize efficiency gains and address any potential privacy concerns as they arise during the rollout. The correct answer is D. Immediately proceed with the development of a centralized digital platform, prioritizing speed of implementation to realize efficiency gains, and address any potential privacy concerns as they arise during the rollout. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a desire for efficiency and the imperative to maintain robust compliance with healthcare regulations, specifically those pertaining to patient privacy and data security under U.S. federal law, HIPAA. The governance review has identified a potential gap, requiring a nuanced approach that balances operational needs with legal and ethical obligations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed solution does not inadvertently create vulnerabilities or violate patient rights. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, risk-based assessment aligned with regulatory requirements. By engaging legal counsel and compliance officers, the organization ensures that any proposed changes are evaluated against the backdrop of HIPAA privacy and security rules. This proactive engagement safeguards against potential breaches, unauthorized disclosures, and subsequent penalties. It demonstrates a commitment to patient trust and adherence to the law, which are foundational to healthcare operations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without a comprehensive compliance review fails to acknowledge the significant financial and reputational risks associated with HIPAA violations. This approach is ethically unsound, as it places operational expediency above patient privacy. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or industry best practices without specific regulatory validation risks misinterpreting or misapplying guidelines, potentially leading to noncompliance. A third incorrect approach that delegates the entire decision-making process to a single department without cross-functional input, particularly from legal and compliance, creates an environment ripe for oversight and potential regulatory breaches. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, multi-stakeholder approach. First, clearly define the problem or opportunity identified by the governance review. Second, identify all relevant regulatory frameworks and internal policies. Third, convene a team comprising representatives from affected departments, legal, compliance, and IT security. Fourth, conduct a thorough risk assessment, considering potential impacts on patient privacy, data security, and operational efficiency. Fifth, develop and evaluate potential solutions, prioritizing those that achieve objectives while maintaining full regulatory compliance. Finally, implement the chosen solution with ongoing monitoring and periodic reassessment. Question 9. The control framework reveals a significant increase in prescription volume due to a new marketing campaign aimed at expanding market share. While the operational goal is to fulfill these new prescriptions rapidly, there are concerns about maintaining the accuracy and integrity of patient data and ensuring the appropriate dispensing of medications under this increased workload. Junior pharmacists suggest streamlining the verification process by reducing the number of checks performed on each prescription to meet the higher demand. What is the most professionally responsible course of action in this scenario? Option A. Delegate the final verification of all prescriptions to pharmacy technician to free up pharmacist time for other tasks. Option B. Implement enhanced quality control measures and pharmacist oversight for all prescriptions, even if it temporarily impacts fulfillment speed, to ensure patient safety and data integrity. Option C. Expedite prescription fulfillment by reducing the number of verification checks performed by pharmacists to meet the increased demand from the marketing campaign. Option D. Ignore minor discrepancies in prescription data, assuming they are temporary system errors, and focus on processing the increased volume. The correct answer is B. Implement enhanced quality control measures and pharmacist oversight for all prescriptions, even if it temporarily impacts fulfillment speed, to ensure patient safety and data integrity. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a business objective, increasing market share, and the ethical and regulatory imperative to ensure patient safety and data privacy. The pressure to achieve sales targets can inadvertently lead to overlooking critical compliance steps, especially when dealing with sensitive patient information and prescription fulfillment. The complexity arises from balancing the need for efficient operations with the stringent requirements of healthcare regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes patient well-being and regulatory adherence above immediate business gains. This aligns with the core principles of healthcare ethics and the legal mandates governing pharmacy operations, such as HIPAA in the U.S. By implementing a robust verification process, even if it temporarily slows down fulfillment, it ensures that prescriptions are accurate, appropriate for the patient, and dispensed by qualified personnel. This proactive stance mitigates the risk of dispensing errors, adverse drug events, and potential data breaches, thereby safeguarding patient health and maintaining the company's reputation and legal standing. This approach reflects best professional practice by embedding a culture of safety and compliance into operational workflows. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves expediting prescription fulfillment without adequate verification to meet the increased demand. This directly violates the professional duty of care owed to patients and contravenes regulations that mandate accurate dispensing. The ethical failure lies in prioritizing business metrics over patient safety, potentially leading to dispensing errors, incorrect dosages, or contraindications being missed. This could result in patient harm and significant legal repercussions for both the individual pharmacist and CVS Health, including fines and loss of licensure. Another incorrect approach might be to delegate prescription verification tasks to less experienced or unqualified staff without direct pharmacist oversight. This is a critical regulatory and ethical lapse. Regulations typically require pharmacists to be ultimately responsible for the accuracy and appropriateness of dispensed medications. Such delegation undermines the pharmacist's professional accountability and increases the risk of errors. Ethically, it fails to uphold the standard of care expected from a licensed professional. A third incorrect approach could be to ignore or downplay reported discrepancies in prescription data, attributing them to system glitches or minor errors. This demonstrates a failure to adhere to internal control procedures and regulatory requirements for reporting and investigating potential compliance issues. Ethically, it represents a disregard for the integrity of patient records and the potential for systemic problems that could impact patient care or data security. This passive approach can escalate minor issues into major compliance failures. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves identifying potential risks to patient safety, data privacy, and regulatory compliance associated with business objectives. When a conflict arises, the framework dictates that patient well-being and regulatory adherence must always take precedence. This requires a thorough understanding of applicable laws, e.g., HIPAA, State Pharmacy Board regulations, ethical codes, and internal company policies. Professionals should proactively seek clarification from supervisors or compliance departments when faced with ambiguous situations or pressure to compromise standards. Documenting all decisions and actions, especially those that deviate from standard procedures or involve risk mitigation, is crucial for accountability and future reference. Question 10. Research into improving patient adherence to prescription refills at CVS pharmacy locations has identified a potential correlation between refill patterns and demographic factors. To further investigate this, a data analyst proposes to access and analyze detailed patient prescription histories, including names, addresses, and specific medication details, to identify trends for targeted outreach programs. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory requirements and ethical best practices for handling patient health information? Option A. De-identify all patient prescription data by removing direct identifiers and using statistical methods to aggregate information, ensuring no individual can be reasonably identified before conducting the analysis for outreach program development. Option B. Utilize the raw, identifiable patient prescription data to create detailed patient profiles for direct marketing of adherence programs, assuming that improving adherence is in the patient's best interest. Option C. Develop internal guidelines for data analysis that are less stringent than federal regulations, focusing primarily on the perceived benefits of improved patient adherence. Option D. Share aggregated but not fully de-identified patient prescription data with an external marketing firm that specializes in patient engagement, without obtaining specific patient consent for this disclosure. The correct answer is A. De-identify all patient prescription data by removing direct identifiers and using statistical methods to aggregate information, ensuring no individual can be reasonably identified before conducting the analysis for outreach program development. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to patient privacy and data security within the context of a healthcare provider like CVS Health, which handles sensitive protected health information. The challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient data analysis to improve patient care and business operations with the stringent legal and ethical obligations to protect patient confidentiality under the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. Missteps can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and erosion of patient trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure all data handling practices are compliant and ethically sound. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes de-identification and anonymization of patient data before it is used for analysis. This aligns directly with HIPAA privacy rule, specifically the requirements for de-identification of PHI when it is to be used for purposes other than treatment, payment, or healthcare operations, or when it is disclosed to third parties. By removing direct and indirect identifiers, the risk of re-identification is minimized, thereby safeguarding patient privacy while still allowing for valuable data insights. This proactive measure demonstrates a commitment to both data utility and patient confidentiality. An incorrect approach that involves using raw, identifiable patient data for marketing analysis without explicit patient consent or a valid HIPAA authorization fails to uphold the core principles of patient privacy. This constitutes a direct violation of HIPAA privacy rule, which strictly limits the use and disclosure of PHI. Another incorrect approach, such as sharing aggregated but not fully de-identified patient data with external marketing firms without proper business associate agreements and safeguards, also presents a significant regulatory failure. This could lead to unauthorized disclosures and potential breaches of PHI, violating HIPAA security rule and privacy rule. A third incorrect approach, relying solely on internal policies that are less stringent than HIPAA, is also professionally unacceptable as it fails to meet the federal legal standard for protecting patient information. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the situation. In this case, HIPAA. They must then assess the potential risks to patient privacy associated with any proposed data use. This involves understanding the different levels of data de-identification and their implications. The process should include consulting with legal and compliance departments to ensure all actions are compliant. When in doubt, erring on the side of greater patient protection is always the most ethical and professionally sound decision. Question 11. Operational review demonstrates that a patient presents with an expired prescription for a non-controlled substance medication that they have been taking for several months. The patient states they are unable to reach their physician's office for a refill authorization and expresses concern about missing a dose. The pharmacist has reviewed the patient's profile and believes the medication is still clinically appropriate for the patient's condition. What is the most appropriate course of action for the pharmacist to take in accordance with U.S. federal and state pharmacy regulations? Option A. Dispense the medication based on the patient's request and the pharmacist's clinical judgment that it is still appropriate, assuming it is a routine refill. Option B. Advise the patient to seek the medication from another pharmacy that may be more lenient with refill policies. Option C. Refuse to dispense the medication and inform the patient that they must obtain a new prescription from their physician before any medication can be provided. Option D. Contact the prescribing physician's office to obtain authorization for a refill, or if unsuccessful, consider dispensing a limited emergency supply as permitted by state law and document the process thoroughly. The correct answer is D. Contact the prescribing physician's office to obtain authorization for a refill, or if unsuccessful, consider dispensing a limited emergency supply as permitted by state law and document the process thoroughly. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a desire to improve patient outcomes and the strict regulatory requirements governing the handling and dispensing of prescription medications. The pharmacist must balance their clinical judgment with legal obligations, ensuring patient safety and compliance without overstepping boundaries. The pressure to act quickly to address a perceived patient need must be weighed against the potential for regulatory violations and patient harm if incorrect procedures are followed. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing patient safety and regulatory compliance, adhering to the established protocol for prescription refills, which involves verifying the prescription with the prescribing physician, ensures that the medication being dispensed is appropriate, current, and authorized. This aligns with the fundamental principles of pharmacy practice, which mandate accurate dispensing and patient counseling. Specifically, this approach upholds the legal and ethical duty to dispense only validly prescribed medications, preventing potential drug interactions, contraindications, or dispensing errors that could arise from an unauthorized refill. This proactive verification process is a cornerstone of safe medication management and patient care within the U.S. regulatory framework governing pharmacies. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves dispensing the medication based solely on the patient's request and the pharmacist's belief that it is a refill. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement for a valid prescription. Dispensing without proper authorization constitutes a violation of federal and state pharmacy laws, potentially leading to disciplinary action, fines, and a compromised patient safety record. It bypasses the essential step of physician verification, which is in place to ensure the continued appropriateness of the medication for the patient's current condition. Another incorrect approach is to refuse to dispense the medication entirely without attempting any form of verification or exploring alternative solutions. A caution is necessary. A complete refusal without exploring avenues for obtaining a valid prescription or discussing alternatives with the patient and physician can be considered a failure to provide adequate patient care. This approach may not directly violate dispensing laws, but can fall short of the ethical obligation to assist patients in obtaining necessary medications when possible, especially when a reasonable path to compliance exists. A third incorrect approach might involve suggesting the patient obtain the medication from another pharmacy that might be willing to dispense it without full verification. This is ethically reprehensible and legally problematic. It actively facilitates a potentially non-compliant and unsafe practice at another establishment and demonstrates a disregard for professional responsibility and patient well-being. This action could be construed as aiding and abetting regulatory violations. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should employ a structured decision-making process. First, identify the core issue, a patient request for a prescription refill that cannot be immediately verified. Second, consult the relevant regulatory framework, e.g., State Board of Pharmacy Regulations, Federal Controlled Substance Act if applicable, to understand the specific requirements for prescription refills and emergency dispensing. Third, assess the immediate patient need against the potential risks of noncompliance. Fourth, explore all compliant avenues for resolution, such as contacting the prescriber, utilizing electronic prescribing systems for refill requests, or, if applicable and within legal limits, considering emergency dispensing provisions. Finally, document all actions taken and communications. This systematic approach ensures that patient care is prioritized while maintaining strict adherence to legal and ethical standards. Question 12. Benchmark analysis indicates that when a CVS health patient requests a prescription refill at a different pharmacy, and the dispensing pharmacist needs to verify prescription details with the original prescribing physician's office, the most compliant and ethically sound method for obtaining necessary patient information is Option A. Contacting the patient's primary care physician to request permission to share the patient's prescription information with the third-party pharmacy. Option B. Directly contacting the patient to obtain their explicit, informed consent to share their protected health information, FI, with the third-party pharmacy for refill verification. Option C. Sharing the patient's prescription details with the third-party pharmacy under the assumption that the patient would want their refill processed quickly. Option D. Proceeding with the refill verification by sharing the patient's prescription details with the third-party pharmacy, as this falls under routine healthcare operations. The correct answer is B. Directly contacting the patient to obtain their explicit, informed consent to share their protected health information, FI, with the third-party pharmacy for refill verification. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to patient privacy and data security within a healthcare setting, specifically CVS Health. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to share information for patient care coordination with the stringent requirements of HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, regulations. A misstep can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and erosion of patient trust. The professional must exercise careful judgment to ensure compliance while facilitating effective healthcare delivery. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves obtaining explicit, informed consent from the patient before sharing their protected health information, FI, with a third-party pharmacy for a refill. This aligns directly with HIPAA privacy rule, which mandates patient authorization for the disclosure of PHI for purposes other than treatment, payment, or healthcare operations, unless specific exceptions apply. Obtaining consent ensures the patient's autonomy and right to control their health information, which is a cornerstone of ethical healthcare practice and regulatory compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis. Sharing the information without explicit consent, even for a refill, violates HIPAA. The exception for sharing information for treatment purposes typically applies to direct care providers involved in the patient's current treatment plan. A third-party pharmacy fulfilling a refill request, while related to care, requires specific authorization for disclosure of PHI beyond the immediate treatment context. This failure represents a direct breach of patient privacy and a violation of HIPAA core principles. Assuming the patient would want the information shared without asking is a dangerous assumption and an ethical lapse. HIPAA requires affirmative consent, not implied consent, for many disclosures. This approach prioritizes convenience over patient rights and regulatory mandates, leading to a potential privacy violation. Contacting the patient's primary care physician for permission instead of directly from the patient is also an incorrect approach. While the physician is involved in the patient's care, the authority to consent to the disclosure of PHI for this specific purpose rests with the patient. The physician cannot unilaterally grant permission for the release of the patient's information to a third-party pharmacy without the patient's explicit authorization. This bypasses the patient's control over their data. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes patient rights and regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Identifying the type of information being handled and its sensitivity (PHI). 2. Understanding the relevant regulations (HIPAA). 3. Assessing the purpose of the information disclosure. 4. Determining if patient consent is required. 5. If consent is required, obtaining it in a clear, informed, and documented manner. 6. If consent is not obtained or is refused, exploring alternative, compliant methods to achieve the desired outcome, or declining the action if no compliant path exists. Question 13. Which approach would be most appropriate for a CVS health pharmacist when presented with a new, company-promoted over-the-counter product that offers a potential alternative to a commonly prescribed medication, considering both patient well-being and professional obligations? Option A. Evaluate the new company-promoted product based on its clinical evidence and suitability for individual patient needs, comparing it objectively with all other available therapeutic options, and counseling the patient on the best choice regardless of its origin. Option B. Recommend the new company-promoted product to patients if it appears to be a viable alternative, emphasizing its availability and any promotional benefits, while also informing them of other options. Option C. Prioritize recommending the new company-promoted product to patients, highlighting its advantages and encouraging its selection over other alternatives to align with company initiatives. Option D. Inform patients about the existence of the new company-promoted product, but defer any recommendation to the patient's physician, without offering an independent professional opinion. The correct answer is B. Recommend the new company-promoted product to patients if it appears to be a viable alternative, emphasizing its availability and any promotional benefits, while also informing them of other options. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire to promote its own products and the pharmacist's ethical and regulatory obligation to provide unbiased patient care. The pharmacist must navigate potential conflicts of interest while ensuring patient safety and adherence to professional standards. Careful judgment is required to balance business objectives with patient well-being. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes patient needs and professional integrity above commercial interests. This aligns with the core tenets of pharmacy practice, which emphasize patient advocacy and the provision of evidence-based recommendations. Specifically, it adheres to regulations and ethical guidelines that mandate pharmacists act in the best interest of their patients, free from undue influence or bias. This includes dispensing medications accurately, providing comprehensive counseling, and recommending appropriate therapies based on clinical evidence and patient-specific factors, not on promotional incentives. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on maximizing sales of a particular product, even if it's a company-affiliated one, fails to uphold the pharmacist's duty of care. This could lead to dispensing decisions that are not in the patient's best interest, potentially resulting in suboptimal treatment outcomes, adverse drug events, or unnecessary costs for the patient. Such an approach would violate ethical principles of beneficence and non-maleficence, and could also contravene regulations governing professional conduct and patient safety, such as those requiring unbiased professional judgment. Another incorrect approach that involves passively accepting promotional materials without critical evaluation or consideration of patient needs also falls short. While not actively pushing a product, this passive acceptance can still lead to a subtle bias in recommendations or a failure to explore equally or more suitable alternatives for the patient. This demonstrates a lack of proactive patient advocacy and a failure to exercise independent professional judgment, which is a cornerstone of responsible pharmacy practice. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a clear framework. 1. Identify the patient's clinical needs and therapeutic goals. 2. Evaluate all available treatment options based on efficacy, safety, cost, and patient-specific factors, independent of any promotional influence. 3. Consult relevant clinical guidelines and evidence-based literature. 4. Engage in open and honest communication with the patient, explaining all viable options and their respective benefits and risks. 5. Document the decision-making process, ensuring transparency and accountability. 6. If a conflict of interest arises, disclose it appropriately and seek guidance if necessary to ensure patient care remains paramount. Question 14. The review process indicates that a CVS health pharmacist has a close personal friendship with a sales representative from a major pharmaceutical company. This friendship predates the pharmacist's employment and involves frequent social interactions outside of work. The pharmacist is involved in formulary decisions and the evaluation of new medications for the pharmacy. What is the most appropriate course of action for the pharmacist in this situation? Option A. Recuse themselves from all discussions and decisions related to medications from that specific pharmaceutical company without informing anyone, to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Option B. Continue to participate in formulary decisions and medication evaluations as usual, assuming personal relationships do not influence professional judgment. Option C. Inform the pharmaceutical company's sales representative that they can no longer socialize due to the potential for conflict and cease all personal contact. Option D. Immediately disclose the personal friendship to their direct supervisor and the company's ethics and compliance department, and request guidance on managing any potential conflicts of interest. The correct answer is D. Immediately disclose the personal friendship to their direct supervisor and the company's ethics and compliance department, and request guidance on managing any potential conflicts of interest. Explanation. The review process indicates a potential conflict of interest scenario involving a CVS health employee and a pharmaceutical manufacturer. This situation is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of ethical guidelines and company policies designed to maintain patient trust and ensure unbiased decision-making in healthcare. The employee's personal relationship could inadvertently influence professional judgment regarding the selection or promotion of a particular drug, even if unintentional. Careful judgment is required to identify and mitigate such risks without unfairly penalizing employees for personal associations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes transparency and adherence to established conflict of interest policies. By disclosing the relationship and seeking guidance from management or the ethics department, the employee demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and allows the company to implement appropriate safeguards. This proactive measure ensures that patient care and business decisions remain objective and free from undue personal influence, aligning with the principles of integrity and accountability expected within the healthcare industry. An incorrect approach that involves ignoring the relationship and continuing to make decisions as usual would be professionally unacceptable. This failure to disclose creates a hidden conflict of interest, violating ethical obligations to act in the best interest of patients and the company. It undermines trust and could lead to biased recommendations or decisions, potentially impacting patient outcomes and the company's reputation. Another incorrect approach, such as immediately ceasing all professional interaction with the manufacturer without proper consultation, might be an overreaction. While intended to avoid conflict, it could disrupt legitimate business processes and partnerships without a clear understanding of the actual risk or the company's established procedures for managing such situations. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the company's conflict of interest framework and a failure to engage in the prescribed resolution process. A professional reasoning framework for similar situations involves a multi-step process. 1. Recognize the potential for a conflict of interest based on personal relationships or external affiliations. 2. Consult company policy and relevant ethical guidelines to understand reporting requirements and prohibited actions. 3. Disclose the relationship or situation to the appropriate authority, e.g., supervisor, ethics officer, promptly and transparently. 4. Cooperate with the company's assessment and follow any directives for mitigation or recusal. 5. Maintain objectivity in all professional duties, ensuring decisions are based on merit and patient well-being. Question 15. The analysis reveals that a CVS health pharmacist is reviewing a new prescription for a patient who is already taking several medications. The pharmacy's dispensing software flags a potential moderate drug-drug interaction between the new medication and one of the patient's existing prescriptions, indicating a possible increased risk of bleeding. The pharmacist has access to the patient's complete medication profile. What is the most appropriate course of action for the pharmacist in this situation, adhering to U.S. federal and state pharmacy regulations and ethical guidelines? Option A. Inform the patient about the potential interaction and advise them to monitor for signs of bleeding, then dispense the medication. Option B. Dispense the new prescription as written without further action, assuming the prescriber is aware of the interaction and has deemed it acceptable. Option C. Contact the prescribing physician to discuss the flagged interaction and explore potential alternatives, or confirm the appropriateness of the prescription given the patient's clinical status. Option D. Refuse to dispense the medication and instruct the patient to seek a different prescription from another physician. The correct answer is C. Contact the prescribing physician to discuss the flagged interaction and explore potential alternatives, or confirm the appropriateness of the prescription given the patient's clinical status. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a pharmacist's duty to dispense legally prescribed medications and the ethical obligation to ensure patient safety and prevent potential harm from drug interactions. The pharmacist must navigate the complexities of drug formularies, patient profiles, and potential adverse effects, all within the strict regulatory framework governing pharmacy practice in the United States. Careful judgment is required to balance legal compliance with patient well-being. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes patient safety by proactively identifying and addressing a potentially dangerous drug interaction. This aligns with the pharmacist's role as a medication expert and a crucial member of the healthcare team, as emphasized by state pharmacy practice acts and professional ethical guidelines. By consulting with the prescriber, the pharmacist fulfills their responsibility to ensure the appropriateness of the medication therapy and to prevent harm, thereby upholding the highest standards of patient care and professional conduct. An incorrect approach that involves dispensing the medication without further inquiry would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This would violate the pharmacist's duty of care and could lead to serious adverse drug events, potentially resulting in patient harm and legal repercussions for the pharmacist and the pharmacy. Another incorrect approach, such as refusing to dispense without a clear and documented rationale, could also be problematic. While caution is warranted, an outright refusal without attempting to resolve the issue through communication with the prescriber may impede necessary patient treatment and could be seen as a failure to act in the patient's best interest, especially if the interaction is manageable or the prescriber has a valid clinical reason for the prescription. Professionals should employ a systematic decision-making process when faced with such situations. This involves 1. Recognizing the potential issue, e.g., a drug interaction alert. 2. Consulting reliable drug information resources to understand the severity and clinical significance of the interaction. 3. Evaluating the patient's specific clinical context, e.g., other medications, existing conditions. 4. Communicating with the prescriber to discuss the concern and explore alternatives or confirm the appropriateness of the therapy. 5. Documenting all actions taken and the rationale behind the final decision. This process ensures that decisions are informed, patient-centered, and compliant with professional standards and regulations. Question 16. The efficiency study reveals that a proposed new workflow in CVS pharmacies could significantly reduce prescription turnaround time. However, a key component of this workflow involves a compressed schedule for pharmacist-to-patient counseling sessions, potentially limiting the depth and thoroughness of these interactions. Which of the following represents the most professionally responsible course of action for a CVS pharmacist manager? Option A. Implement the new workflow as proposed, assuming that patients can seek further clarification if needed, to maximize operational efficiency and meet performance metrics. Option B. Advocate for modifications to the new workflow that preserve adequate time for comprehensive pharmacist counseling, even if it means a slight reduction in the projected efficiency gains, to ensure patient safety and regulatory compliance. Option C. Delegate the majority of patient counseling to pharmacy technicians, as they are trained to provide basic medication information, to free up pharmacist time for prescription verification. Option D. Proceed with the compressed counseling schedule, but instruct pharmacists to only address critical drug interactions, omitting general usage instructions and potential side effects to save time. Correct answer is A. Implement the new workflow as proposed, assuming that patients can seek further clarification if needed, to maximize operational efficiency and meet performance metrics. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential conflict between a new pharmacy workflow designed to expedite prescription fulfillment and existing CVS health policies regarding patient counseling and medication safety. The challenge lies in balancing the drive for operational efficiency with the non-negotiable regulatory and ethical obligations to ensure patient well-being and adherence to dispensing laws. This scenario requires careful judgment to avoid compromising patient care for the sake of speed. The correct approach prioritizes patient safety and regulatory compliance by ensuring that the new workflow incorporates adequate time and resources for pharmacist counseling, even if it slightly impacts the speed of fulfillment. This aligns with the fundamental principles of pharmacy practice, which mandate that pharmacists verify the appropriateness of dispensed medications, counsel patients on their use, and address any potential drug interactions or side effects. This approach upholds the pharmacist's professional responsibility and adheres to federal and state pharmacy laws, such as the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and state-specific pharmacy practice acts, which emphasize patient safety and informed consent. An incorrect approach that solely focuses on maximizing prescription throughput without ensuring sufficient patient counseling time would be professionally unacceptable. This would violate ethical standards that place patient welfare above all else and could lead to regulatory violations. For instance, neglecting to counsel patients on new prescriptions or significant changes to existing ones could contravene State Board of Pharmacy regulations that require such counseling, potentially resulting in disciplinary action, fines, or loss of licensure. Another incorrect approach might involve delegating critical counseling tasks to non-pharmacist personnel without proper oversight or legal authorization, which would also constitute a regulatory and ethical breach, as the ultimate responsibility for patient safety and accurate medication information rests with the licensed pharmacist. The professional reasoning process for navigating such situations involves a hierarchical assessment of priorities. First, patient safety and regulatory compliance must be paramount. Any proposed efficiency measure must be evaluated against these non-negotiable standards. Second, consider the ethical implications of the proposed change, ensuring it aligns with the pharmacist's duty of care. Third, explore alternative workflow modifications that can achieve efficiency gains without compromising patient care or regulatory adherence. This might involve optimizing technician roles, improving inventory management, or leveraging technology for non-clinical tasks, thereby freeing up pharmacists' time for essential patient interactions. Question 17. Compliance review shows that a CVS health pharmacy is considering a new marketing campaign to promote its specialized medication adherence program. The marketing team has proposed using anonymized patient demographic data to tailor advertisements and has also suggested including testimonials from satisfied patients. The pharmacy manager needs to ensure this campaign adheres to all relevant U.S. federal and state regulations, as well as CVS Health's internal policies. Which of the following approaches best balances the marketing objectives with regulatory and ethical requirements? Option A. Obtain explicit, written consent from each patient before using their anonymized demographic data for targeted advertising, and ensure all patient testimonials are reviewed for accuracy and compliance with advertising standards, with a clear disclaimer about individual results. Option B. Focus the marketing campaign solely on the program's features and benefits without any patient-specific data or testimonials, to avoid any potential privacy or advertising issues. Option C. Share anonymized patient demographic data with a third-party marketing analytics firm under a general data sharing agreement, and use patient testimonials that highlight general program success without specific patient identifiers. Option D. Proceed with using anonymized patient demographic data for advertising without individual consent, as it is de-identified, and use patient testimonials as provided by the marketing team, assuming they are truthful. Correct answer is A. Obtain explicit, written consent from each patient before using their anonymized demographic data for targeted advertising, and ensure all patient testimonials are reviewed for accuracy and compliance with advertising standards, with a clear disclaimer about individual results. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire to promote its services and the stringent regulatory requirements designed to protect patient privacy and prevent misleading advertising. The need for a pharmacist to balance their professional judgment with the company's marketing objectives, while adhering strictly to U.S. federal and state pharmacy laws and CVS Health's internal compliance guidelines, is paramount. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any promotional activity is not only effective for the business, but also legally compliant and ethically sound, particularly concerning patient confidentiality and the accurate representation of services. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes patient privacy and regulatory adherence above all else. By focusing on obtaining explicit, informed consent for any use of patient information in marketing materials, and ensuring that all claims about services are substantiated and not misleading, this approach directly aligns with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, and relevant state Board of Pharmacy regulations. It upholds the ethical duty of a pharmacist to act in the best interest of the patient and maintain public trust. This method ensures that promotional efforts are conducted transparently and with respect for patient rights, thereby mitigating legal and reputational risks for both the individual pharmacist and CVS Health. An incorrect approach that involves using de-identified patient data without explicit consent for marketing campaigns fails to meet the rigorous standards of HIPAA. While de-identification aims to protect privacy, the regulations are clear that even de-identified data can be subject to certain restrictions, and using it for marketing purposes without a clear legal basis or patient authorization is a significant risk. This approach demonstrates a failure to understand the nuances of HIPAA privacy rule and could lead to substantial fines and legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach, which involves making broad, unsubstantiated claims about the efficacy or superiority of a particular service in marketing materials, violates regulations enforced by the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, as well as state pharmacy laws regarding false advertising. Such claims can mislead patients, compromise their health decisions, and damage the professional reputation of the pharmacist and the company. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence in verifying marketing content and a disregard for ethical advertising standards. A third incorrect approach, which involves sharing patient prescription information with third-party marketing vendors without proper authorization or business associate agreements, represents a severe breach of patient confidentiality and a violation of HIPAA. This exposes sensitive health information to unauthorized parties, creating significant legal liability and eroding patient trust. It highlights a fundamental misunderstanding of data security protocols and the legal obligations surrounding protected health information. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-step approach. First, thoroughly understand the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the situation, e.g., HIPAA, state pharmacy laws, FTC guidelines. Second, consult CVS Health's internal compliance policies and seek guidance from the company's legal or compliance department when in doubt. Third, always err on the side of caution when patient privacy or regulatory compliance is involved. Fourth, prioritize patient well-being and ethical conduct over business expediency. Finally, ensure that any proposed action is transparent, justifiable, and fully compliant with all applicable laws and ethical standards. Question 18. During the evaluation of potential service enhancements for CVS Health pharmacy customers, a team proposes analyzing prescription refill patterns to identify opportunities for proactive medication adherence support. The team has access to a large dataset of customer prescription histories. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for data-driven insights with patient privacy obligations under U.S. federal and state regulations? Option A. Access and analyze individual customer prescription refill histories directly from the pharmacy system to contact customers and ask them about their refill habits without first de-identifying the data or obtaining specific consent for this outreach. Option B. De-identify the prescription refill data by removing all direct identifiers and any unique demographic information that could reasonably lead to individual identification, then aggregate the remaining data for trend analysis. Option C. Share the complete, identifiable prescription refill data with an external marketing firm to analyze customer behavior and suggest service improvements, with a general understanding that the data will be used solely for this purpose. Option D. Utilize the identifiable prescription refill data to create targeted advertisements for specific health-related products and services based on individual customers' prescription histories, without obtaining explicit consent for this marketing use. Correct answer is B. De-identify the prescription refill data by removing all direct identifiers and any unique demographic information that could reasonably lead to individual identification, then aggregate the remaining data for trend analysis. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to patient privacy and data security within the context of a healthcare provider like CVS Health. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to access and utilize patient information for legitimate business purposes, like improving services or identifying trends, with the stringent legal and ethical obligations to protect protected health information. 5. A professional in this situation must navigate the complex requirements of HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and related state privacy laws, ensuring that any data handling practices are compliant and uphold patient trust. The correct approach emphasizes de-identification and aggregation of data, which aligns with HIPAA privacy rule. By removing direct identifiers and ensuring that the remaining information cannot be reasonably used to identify an individual, the organization can leverage data for insights without compromising patient confidentiality. This method is considered best professional practice because it directly addresses the core tenets of HIPAA, which permit the use and disclosure of de-identified health information for various purposes, including research and public health activities, without patient authorization. This approach demonstrates a commitment to both data utility and robust privacy protection, fostering trust and minimizing legal risk. An incorrect approach that involves sharing identifiable patient data with a third-party marketing firm, even with a vague agreement for service improvement, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This directly violates HIPAA privacy rule, which strictly limits the disclosure of PHI without patient authorization or a valid business associate agreement that outlines specific safeguards. Such an action could lead to substantial fines, legal penalties, and severe reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, which involves using patient data for targeted advertising based on specific health conditions without explicit consent, also fails to meet regulatory standards. This constitutes an unauthorized use and disclosure of PHI, potentially violating state consumer protection laws and ethical guidelines regarding sensitive health information. It disregards the principle of patient autonomy and the right to control one's health data. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-step approach. First, clearly identify the purpose for which patient data is intended to be used. Second, assess whether the proposed use or disclosure of data is permitted under HIPAA and other applicable regulations. If direct identifiers are necessary, determine if patient authorization can be obtained. If not, explore de-identification or aggregation methods that render the data non-identifiable. Third, if data sharing with a third party is contemplated, ensure a robust business associate agreement is in place that clearly defines the permitted uses and disclosures and mandates appropriate security safeguards. Finally, consult with legal counsel and privacy officers to ensure all actions are fully compliant and ethically sound before proceeding. Question 19. The risk matrix shows a moderate risk score for a prescription for a controlled substance presented by a patient who is not a regular customer and whose prescriber is located in a different state, with the prescription appearing to be for a higher dosage than typically prescribed for the indicated condition. What is the most appropriate professional course of action? Option A. Contact the prescriber to verify the legitimacy of the prescription, discuss the dosage, and confirm the patient's medical need. Option B. Dispense the prescription as written, but decline to fill any future prescriptions from this prescriber due to the perceived risk. Option C. Dispense the prescription as written, assuming the prescriber's intent is valid, and make a note to monitor the patient's future prescriptions. Option D. Refuse to dispense the prescription and immediately report the prescriber to the state's medical board and the DEA. The correct answer is A. Contact the prescriber to verify the legitimacy of the prescription, discuss the dosage, and confirm the patient's medical need. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a business objective, increasing prescription volume, and patient safety, which is paramount in healthcare. The pressure to meet targets can lead to overlooking potential risks, requiring a pharmacist to exercise sound professional judgment and ethical reasoning. The challenge lies in balancing operational demands with the fundamental duty to protect patient well-being, especially when dealing with controlled substances where diversion and misuse are significant concerns. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes patient safety and regulatory compliance by initiating a documented discussion with the prescriber to clarify the prescription's legitimacy and address any potential concerns. This aligns with the pharmacist's ethical and legal responsibility to ensure prescriptions are valid and appropriate for the patient. Specifically, under U.S. federal and state pharmacy laws, pharmacists have a duty to verify prescriptions, especially those for controlled substances, to prevent diversion and abuse. This proactive step demonstrates due diligence and adherence to the principle of know your patient and know your prescriber. It also aligns with the DEA's regulations regarding the dispensing of controlled substances, which require pharmacists to exercise professional judgment to avoid dispensing prescriptions that are not for a legitimate medical purpose. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves dispensing the prescription without further inquiry, assuming the prescriber's intent is valid. This fails to meet the pharmacist's professional obligation to verify potentially suspicious prescriptions, particularly for controlled substances. Ethically, it disregards the potential for harm to the patient or diversion into illicit channels. Legally, it could expose the pharmacist and pharmacy to penalties for dispensing a prescription that is not for a legitimate medical purpose, violating federal and state controlled substance laws. Another incorrect approach is to refuse to fill the prescription outright and immediately report the prescriber to regulatory authorities without attempting to clarify the situation. While reporting is sometimes necessary, this approach bypasses a crucial step of professional due diligence. It can unfairly damage a prescriber's reputation and disrupt legitimate patient care if the prescription was, in fact, valid but poorly communicated or if there was a misunderstanding. This fails to uphold the principle of fairness and due process in professional interactions. A third incorrect approach is to fill the prescription, but make a note to watch the patient for future issues without any immediate action. This is insufficient as it does not address the immediate concern raised by the prescription's characteristics. It defers responsibility and fails to proactively mitigate risk. Ethically, it is a passive approach that does not fulfill the pharmacist's duty to act when red flags are present. Legally, it may not satisfy the requirements for due diligence in verifying controlled substance prescriptions. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should employ a decision-making process that begins with identifying potential risks and red flags. This involves applying knowledge of pharmacy laws, regulations e.g., DEA guidelines for controlled substances, and ethical principles. The next step is to gather more information through direct communication with the prescriber, seeking clarification and context. If concerns persist after clarification, the professional should then consider escalating the issue according to established pharmacy policies and regulatory reporting requirements. This systematic approach ensures that patient safety and legal compliance are maintained while also respecting professional relationships and due process. Question 20. The audit findings indicate a pattern of potential oversharing of patient demographic information during internal team meetings discussing operational efficiency. While the intent is to identify process bottlenecks, the specific patient identifiers included in the discussions might not be adequately protected. What is the most appropriate next step for the pharmacy manager? Option A. Immediately consult with the CVS health privacy officer and review relevant HIPAA guidelines to determine if the current discussion practices constitute a violation and to develop a compliant communication strategy. Option B. Instruct the team to cease all discussions related to patient cases in meetings until a new, more secure system for sharing information can be implemented. Option C. Share the audit findings with the entire pharmacy staff to raise general awareness about data privacy concerns without specific guidance on immediate actions. Option D. Proceed with the current meeting format, assuming that internal discussions among employees are implicitly permitted under HIPAA for operational purposes. The correct answer is A. Immediately consult with the CVS Health Privacy Officer and review relevant HIPAA guidelines to determine if the current discussion practices constitute a violation and to develop a compliant communication strategy. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge involving the interpretation and application of CVS Health's internal policies and potentially relevant U.S. federal regulations concerning patient privacy and data security, specifically HIPAA. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for efficient internal communication and process improvement with the stringent requirements for protecting protected health information. 5. A misstep could lead to significant regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and erosion of patient trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the audit findings, cross-referencing them with CVS Health's established policies on data handling and patient privacy, and consulting with the designated privacy officer or legal counsel. This ensures that any proposed changes or actions are compliant with both internal guidelines and applicable U.S. federal laws like HIPAA. The privacy officer is the designated authority to interpret and enforce these regulations within the organization, making their consultation essential for ensuring adherence to best professional practices and regulatory mandates. This methodical approach prioritizes patient confidentiality and legal compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately implementing changes based solely on the audit findings, without verifying compliance with privacy regulations. This fails to acknowledge the critical importance of HIPAA and other privacy laws, potentially leading to unauthorized disclosure or misuse of PHI, which is a direct violation of federal law and carries severe penalties. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the audit findings as minor operational issues without considering their potential impact on patient data. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the organization's responsibility to safeguard sensitive information, which is a fundamental ethical and regulatory obligation. A third incorrect approach is to share the detailed audit findings, including patient-specific information, with a broader group of employees not directly involved in the audit or remediation process. This constitutes an unauthorized disclosure of PHI, violating HIPAA privacy and security rules and exposing the organization to significant legal and financial repercussions. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such situations should adopt a structured decision-making process. First, understand the scope and implications of the audit findings. Second, identify all relevant internal policies and external regulations. Third, consult with the appropriate subject matter experts, such as the privacy officer, legal counsel, or compliance department. Fourth, develop a remediation plan that is both effective in addressing the audit findings and fully compliant with all applicable rules. Finally, document all steps taken and decisions made for accountability and future reference.